recently I talked about the Powerpuff Girls episode Equal Fights, and how it was way ahead of its time in criticizing people who claim to be feminists, when in reality they're just using feminism as an excuse to be misandrists. Unfortunately, in modern media, people who are like Van Patel in that episode have pretty much taken over the writing staffs of many movies/shows, using entertainment as a means to perpetuate their own hateful views, which results in hypocritical and backwards messages. One example of this is the Simpsons episode, Bart vs. Itchy and Scratchy. Initially, I thought the Simpsons in this day and age was just a show of its former self. However, after seeing this episode, I realized that it's actually morphed into something far worse. Now, before anyone tries to argue that the Simpsons has always been left-leaning, let me say that while this may be true, the problem with this argument is that the way politics have been written in the earlier seasons and this episode are nowhere near equivalent. While the writing team of The Simpsons back in the day made their left-leaning stance clear, that didn't stop them from criticizing and making fun of bad and or stupid people on the left.
That's right! A girl wants to play football. How about that?
Well, that's super duper, Lisa. In fact, we already have 4 girls on the team.
You do?
That's because, guess what? You can have your political beliefs while also disagreeing with people who also share those views, because they conduct themselves in a way that's objectively wrong. That's called nuance. The problem with Bart vs. Itchy and Scratchy is that it unironically pushes radical and problematic left-wing politics as being correct, when in reality, they should be criticized. Being progressive is important, but this isn't the right way to go about it. And the writers of this episode unfortunately think that it is. But before we get to the episode, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell for notifications. Also, be sure to give this video a like, share, and comment, as it will really help to support this channel. Anyway, on to the review. So the episode begins at a convention that the Simpsons are attending, and at a panel, Krusty the Clown announces that there is a new upcoming Itchy and Scratchy show, which just turns out to be a cheap reboot that gender swaps the titular characters. And what's odd is that Krusty outright states that this was solely made for profit.
Girl power is where it's at. That movie where Superman was a chick made him a Gila of shekels.
And yet the episode blatantly strawmans anyone who would criticize this as just sexist males who can't handle female characters, and disregards the fact that there are also people who rightfully call this out as lazy corporate pandering, even when Krusty readily admits to this being the case.
See? Girls like my pandering.
This is the big issue with the episode. You can't acknowledge how companies use gender swapping as a means of pandering to leftists, who care more about identity politics than actual equality, while also trying to say that this is some big leap forward in achieving equality for women in society, and to argue otherwise automatically makes you a bigot. Now, with the recent South Park special, Joining the Pandaverse, it criticizes both the woke and anti-woke crowds, and that works because both of them have their faults, and at no point does it come across as contradictory, as it showcases the nuances of the topic. Bart vs. Itchy and Scratchy, however, instead comes across as if it's trying to play both sides, which simply does not work. Alright, getting back to the episode. Bart and the other boys are enraged by this all-female reboot, and all agree to refuse to watch it. Lisa, on the other hand, sees this as inspirational and empowering, despite not caring about the genders of Itchy and Scratchy before. Later, Lisa is recording her blind reaction to the premiere of the gender-swapped Itchy and Scratchy, while also making a pretentious speech about how historical this is for female representation in animation. And I'm just gonna drop this sonicboom clip.
You know, Amy, anytime someone calls attention to the breaking of gender rules, it ultimately undermines the concept of gender equality by implying that this is an exception and not the status quo.
It still baffles me how a Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon has a better understanding of feminism than so-called feminists in this day and age. Also, corporate gender swap characters are not deserving of this sort of praise. Anyway, Bart walks in on Lisa's recording and actually finds himself laughing at the new Itchy and Scratchy, probably because it's literally no different to the original, thus showing how meaningless the gender swaps are. Lisa then mocks Bart and posts his reaction to expose him as a hypocrite, because I guess we gotta portray activists as antagonistic, rather than have them try to help people improve themselves. The next day, Bart is treated as a traitor in the eyes of all the boys. He then comes across a group of feminist activists called Bossy Riot, and they are basically the most stereotypical, man-hating misandrists, who masquerade as feminists.
You tell anyone about this, you're canceled. You know, if we're really serious about gender equality, it's only right that a boy be our servant.
and the episode tries to present them as heroes fighting against the patriarchy. However, in execution, they just come across as straight up awful people. Bart decides to join their group after learning about the various stunts they commit as protests, as he just sees them as point pranks. Although, that's pretty much what they just boiled down to. Just excuses to bully boys and men out of a petty hatred for them. This could have been used as an opportunity for some commentary about extreme activism that results in creating more harm rather than fixing any real problems, as well as how these acts just alienate people from the cause. But nope, the writers seem to think that this is genuinely progressive, and so they present it as such, which just results in the episode having completely backwards morals. Lisa sees these acts on the news and expresses admiration for the group.
We need fearless female activists to fight back against misogyny and manspreading.
That idiotic buzzword should have died off by the end of 2015, but the fact that it's still unironically being used in mainstream media to this day is utterly embarrassing.
Sibs, I believe we are experiencing the cultural phenomenon known as manspreading.
I don't need a mansplaining song about manspreading.
Later, Lisa finds out that Bart is a part of Bossy Riot and becomes enraged because according to her, boys can't be feminists.
You're not a girl. You just want to spray paint the world and watch it drip. This is someone else's war.
Which makes zero sense. Even if a certain issue doesn't affect someone directly, it doesn't mean they still can't help out in fighting against it, because the more people there are speaking out against it, the stronger the cause becomes. The outrage would have been justified if she had just called him out on fighting for a cause for selfish reasons. But instead, Lisa just ends up becoming even more unlikable in this episode than she already was. Anyway, news gets out that Krusty has decided to cancel the all-female Itchy and Scratchy, and so Bossy Riot decides that they're going to destroy all of the original cartoons, and they tie up Bart when he protests against this. After Lisa finds him, they both go to stop Bossy Riot. Bart tries to talk them out of destroying the tapes by giving a speech about how the genders of Itchy and Scratchy doesn't matter, as the comedy is the same as it is, regardless. And you'd think that this is where we will finally get the middle ground between the two extremes of misogynist and misandrist that the episode desperately needed. But then Lisa stops him because he was supposedly mansplaining.
It doesn't matter if it's boy guts or girl guts. See, the thing about comedy is...
Bart, stop mansplaining!
And even though Lisa saves the tapes, the episode goes right back to siding with Bossy Riot. Again, this episode can't seem to decide on who's in the right and who's in the wrong. The answer would have been much clearer if the writers acknowledged that there is such a thing as a middle ground, and established the difference between true feminists who fight for equal rights the right way, and misandrists like Bossy Riot who just want to spread their own hatred for men under the guise of feminism. But the problem is that they share the same views with Bossy Riot, and therefore don't go as far as they should in criticizing them. But then, why paint them as villains for attempting to destroy the old Itchy and Scratchy tapes, only to then immediately turn around and say, nah, they're in the right, and let them get away with their awful actions scot-free, which makes this episode's stance incredibly confusing. This issue might have been fixed if Bart got to finish his speech, as it sounded like it was heading towards that middle ground, but instead he gets caught up for mansplaining, which, by that logic, any case of a male making a point is automatically sexist, regardless of how they go about it. Anyway, in the final scene of the episode, Bossy Riot asks Lisa if she would like to join their group, because she made a bunch of boys cry, ignoring the fact that she stopped them in their plans to destroy the old Itchy and Scratchy show. And this is her response.
Me? Join you? Can I do it? Can I push my beliefs further than they've ever gone?
No! Joining them is not taking your feminism to the next level, because they are just misandrists, who gaslight people into thinking that they're feminists, so that they can get away with their misandry and extremist activism. Heck, you disagreed with that plan to destroy the old Itchy and Scratchy tapes, and stopped it. So why would you want to join their group? And that was Bart vs. Itchy and Scratchy, and it was a cringy and pandering mess that disguises bad morals as progressive ones. And that'll just about do it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to give it a like, share, and comment. Subscribe to my channel and hit the bell for notifications. And if you are interested in supporting this channel, then head over to my Patreon. Well, I've got nothing else to say, so see ya. Bye.